Elf is one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time. Between its interesting father-son dynamic and a series of escapades that can truly only happen in New York, it all comes together to create a Christmas classic. But what if I told you that we almost got an Elf sequel that had none of that, and instead a story that takes place largely in the suburbs of New Jersey that sees Buddy trying to win the affections of his daughter, meeting a league of international Santas, and rescuing Papa Elf from an evil South Pole anti-Santa? Well, that's the movie we'll be discussing today as we break down the development, plot, and cancellation of Elf 2. The year was 2003, and Elf was released in theaters that November. The movie would go on to become a smash hit, grossing over $220 million worldwide against a meager $33 million budget. As the year turned over into 2004, Will Ferrell would go on to star in Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy, and have a memorable cameo in Starsky and Hutch. At this point, his star power was undeniable, and New Line Cinema knew it. In mid-2005, Variety reported that the studio commissioned a script for an Elf sequel written by Scott Armstrong, best known for Old School, Starsky and Hutch, along with doing some uncredited rewrites on Elf to pen the script. But there was one major hurdle to overcome. Will Ferrell hadn't yet signed on to the film. And after the disastrous failure of New Line's recent sequel, Son of the Mask, which didn't see Jim Carrey return from the original film, the studio was adamant that they would only move forward with the sequel if its original star was involved. However, Armstrong and Ferrell had an existing working relationship that left New Line confident enough that the star would likely sign on once he read the script. Armstrong would go on to complete his first draft in late July of that year, while New Line would offer Ferrell $29 million to star. But Ferrell turned it down, as he would recall in 2021. "I would have had to promote the movie from an honest place, which would have been like, oh no, it's not good. I just couldn't turn down that much money. And I thought, can I actually say those words? I don't think I can, so I guess I can't do the movie." Despite this seemingly clear-cut answer as to why the film was never greenlit, Ferrell's disdain for the script wasn't the only thing that kept Elf 2 from getting off the ground. But before we get into the other reason why, let's take a deep dive into the film's plot. Our story begins a long while since we last saw Buddy the Elf. Papa Elf narrates, telling us how every Christmas, Buddy has put out a new holiday bestseller. His daughter is growing up, and he loves her more than anything. They are the best of buds. Author, family man, lover of Christmas, Buddy had done well in New York City. But the city is a little cramped, so Buddy, Jovi, and little Susie moved to the suburbs of New Jersey. Buddy drops Susie off on her first day of school, and has a hard time parting with her, but after he does, he takes in the sights of suburbia, eventually stumbling upon the massive candy emporium at the mall where he befriends a weird but kind worker named Falcon, who's a fan of his books. Meanwhile, at school, Susie's class is taught about Christmas traditions across the world, how other countries have their own Santas or Santa equivalents like Saint Nick from the Netherlands or Christmas goblins from Iceland. But Susie objects to all of this. There's only one Santa. She's met him. Two sisters in the class, Jess and Jamie Spicer, take a liking to Susie. They notice the unique jacket that Susie's wearing and ask where it's from. Susie tells them proudly that she made it with her dad. But to the girls, that sounds kinda sad. Buddy picks up Susie from school and pulls her home in a sled. This is noticed by the sister's father, Mr. Spicer, who thinks Buddy is totally nuts. And his opinion is only strengthened when that night, the Spicers receive some over-the-top Christmas carolers. Mr. Spicer ridicules the performance, and Susie meets eyes with Jess and Jamie in the doorway. For the first time, she's embarrassed. The next morning, Susie tells Buddy and Jovi that the Spicer sisters invited her over after school. Buddy thinks that he's also invited, but Susie breaks it to him that he's not coming, before also declining Buddy's offer to pull her to school on the sled. She wants to walk. Buddy meets up with Falcon and voices his concern about Susie not wanting to hang out with him, before volunteering to train some mall Santas. At school, Jess and Jamie notice Susie's lunch. Ice cream lasagna. Buddy clearly made it for her. The sisters think it looks a little weird, which makes Susie self-conscious, so they offer to share their lunch with her and give her one of their jackets. Sometime later, it's career day at school. Mr. Spicer tells the class about how he drills for oil in Antarctica and has to take a special helicopter to even get there. Buddy follows this up with a sneak peek of his new book, Cole Kringle, The Story of the South Pole Elves. He tells the class all about Cole's escalating attempts to take the North Pole down over the years, egging Santa's house, shaving his beard, melting an ice cap to flood Santa's workshop. Cole rules the South Pole with his elves who work in the mining tunnels and aren't allowed to laugh ever. Everybody hates Buddy's story, but Buddy tells them that Santa told him this was all true. Susie is mortified. That night, Susie tells Buddy that she wants nothing to do with elf culture. She just wants to be normal. Hurt, Buddy sits on the roof to clear his head. Jovi joins him and tells him that he's never going to be normal, and that's what she loves about him. But maybe they can tone it down for a bit. Buddy forsakes his elf name and now goes by Brian. In his mission to be as normal as possible, he cuts off sweets, learns to drive, and joins a country club, which also happens to be frequented by Mr. Spicer and his friends, who Buddy demolishes in poker. One night, Buddy and Jovi go to a holiday costume party in the neighborhood, where Buddy awkwardly stumbles his way through charades before everybody moves out to the deck. While Buddy tries out the hot tub, a drunk Mr. Spicer stumbles outside wearing Buddy's elf costume and makes fun of him, which leaves Buddy disturbed at this perversion of elfhood. Meanwhile, Susie is sleeping over at the Spicers. Jess and Jamie force her to say that there is no Santa and make fun of Buddy. Susie begins to stand up for him and almost leaves, but she's ultimately convinced to stay. The next morning, Mr. Spicer makes fun of Buddy to his daughters and Susie, who feels guilty laughing at her dad, but does. Buddy comes to pick her up, but she asks to stay longer and is just overall short with him. Buddy pushed Susie away, and he's heartbroken. Later that day, after consoling Buddy over his heartbreak, Jovi reminds him that his publicist called, telling him to be ready for his TV appearance to promote his new book. Buddy asks if Susie is coming, and Jovi tells him, yes, she is. She asked 5 times and she's coming. Before going on to reassure him that as long as Susie knows he loves her, everything will be okay. As Papa Elf continues to narrate this tale, there's a knock at the door of his cabin. He tries to shoo the visitors away, but eventually goes to the door and is kidnapped. Inspired by Jovi's words, Buddy works furiously through the night to retool his book, and that next morning, live on TV, with thousands, maybe millions of viewers, but more importantly, Susie's class watching, Buddy reveals his new book. It's a Susie Christmas. It's entirely about the things that make Susie special. How she can burp louder than Buddy, old pictures of her in the bathtub. It's over 450 pages of Susie's quirks. Buddy thinks it's his best work. Susie, aghast, storms off, which causes Buddy to rush off set after her. She tells Buddy that all he does is make her look like a freak. She never wants to go to the North Pole ever again. And that the Spicers invited her to go to Florida for Christmas. She wants to go with them. At home, Buddy is totally dejected. But Jovi finds him and starts to get emotional. She read Buddy's book, every word, and agrees. It's his best work. Buddy steps into the yard to clear his head, and is greeted by Leon the Snowman, who dissolved into a cumulus cloud and traveled to deliver a message from Santa. He tells Buddy that Papa Elf has been captured by Cole Kringle and is being held at the South Pole. He hands Buddy a plane ticket to meet Santa, not at the North Pole, but Switzerland. Buddy flies out and meets up with Santa, who breaks some important news to him. He's not the only Santa in the world. He's only America's Santa. He then takes Buddy to the Summit of Santas, where he meets the Santas and Santa equivalents from every country in the world, like Saint Nick, the Christmas Goblins, and many others. It's revealed that not only does Papa Elf work on Santa's sleigh, but he also magically turns the millions of presents into elf dust so they can all fit into Santa's bag. Without him, American Christmas is in jeopardy. Buddy was all the Santa's last choice for this rescue mission, but he actually may be the only one who has a chance, because as it turns out, elves from the South Pole are all 6'3" with curly hair. There's only one issue. The Santas have no clue how to get Buddy to the South Pole, but he actually does. Meanwhile, Susie, much to her protest, and Jovi have been making their yearly trek to the North Pole for Christmas. Susie complains that she's embarrassed by Buddy, but Jovi starts welling up and tells her that Buddy is the best father she could have. And Susie realizes her father's super secret Christmas Eve mission is only happening because something must be very wrong. Buddy goes to the Spicers' timeshare in Florida and explains the situation to Mr. Spicer, but he's obviously not going to help Buddy. Just then, Leon, some Arctic puffins, and Mr. Narwhal appear to help Buddy plead his case. Mr. Spicer thinks he's hallucinating. This can't be real. Buddy pleads one more time to let him take his special helicopter to Antarctica, and in a moment of pity, Mr. Spicer agrees. Buddy gets dropped off on Antarctica, hugs Mr. Spicer, and walks off into the snow, as Mr. Spicer hopes that Buddy freezes to death. Buddy arrives to a seemingly deserted South Pole to see Santa's stolen sleigh and his reindeer chained up. He descends into the dark and dusty coal mines searching for Papa Elf. After finding a captiveless dungeon, Buddy finally makes his way to the dining hall, where we finally meet Cole Kringle himself, made in claymation, speaking in rhyme, giving a speech to the other elves. Evil and charismatic, he soaks in the fact that tomorrow, without Papa Elf around, there will be no presents. As it turns out, Cole was bitter this whole time because his birthday is December 25th. And after years of Santa hijacking it for his holiday, Cole will finally have a day all to himself. He motions to Papa Elf, chained over a fiery pit, and begins to lower him. Buddy slips away and tries to stop the gears from lowering Papa, but Cole catches him. As Buddy attempts to escape the situation, he begins to stumble through the most preposterous series of pratfalls ever seen. When he's finally done, Buddy can't help but laugh at his ridiculous misfortune. Papa Elf joins, but then a South Pole elf joins, and then another, and another until the entire South Pole is rolling on the floor laughing. Useless against the might of laughter, Cole has no more power here. Buddy saves Papa Elf and they fly back to the North Pole. He reunites with Jovi and Susie, who tells him that she doesn't care what anybody thinks. He is the coolest dad there is. Everybody turns to Papa Elf, expecting him to turn the presents into dust. But he breaks the news that there's just not enough time for him to turn everything into dust by Christmas. So in the ultimate act of giving, the Santas from around the world pick up the slack, giving the children a little piece of their country's culture this year for one of the most beautiful and strange Christmases there ever was. This script is a real mixed bag. I really dig the idea of multiple Santas and how the Spicer sisters aren't out and out malicious. They're just kind of kids, and kids can sometimes be mean. I especially love the idea of Cole Kringle's existence, specifically as a claymation Dark Santa. I think there's really clever ideas in here. But on the flip side, the movie isn't really even about Christmas until Buddy travels to the Summit of Santas in the third act. Jovi really has nothing to do, and it's bizarre to me that at the very least, Walter doesn't make an appearance. For that matter, any of Buddy's human family. They were so core to the first movie, and to have them not even be referenced here just doesn't feel right. So that raises the question, other than Will Ferrell generally not liking the script, why else did it get canned? The idea of doing an Elf sequel was seemingly doomed even before the release of the original film, because Elf's director, Jon Favreau, and Will Ferrell did not get along. In a 2020 interview on the radio show Bull and Fox, James Caan, who played Walter, revealed an interesting tidbit related to Elf 2's fate.
Well, there was. We were going to do it, and I thought, oh my God, I finally got a franchise movie. I could make some money and let my kids do what the hell they want to do. The director and Will didn't get along very well. So Will wanted to do it, and the guy wouldn't. He didn't want that the director, and he had it in his contract. It was one of those things.
Right.
So
yeah, one of those things where, I have to be attached to this one in order to do this one, and it was just too many personalities to try to get together.
In 2021, one of Caan and Farrell's co-stars from the film, Faison Love, corroborated this feud in an interview with Vlad TV, recalling that
Will didn't trust John's judgment from day one. Okay.
In short, Favreau contractually would have to be involved had Elf 2 been made, but with his and Farrell's strained relationship, it wasn't meant to be. What's interesting about Kahn's comments is that he never appears in Elf 2's screenplay. So whether he found out about Elf 2 through the Hollywood trades and assumed he would be involved, or if there was another iteration of the script that did feature Walter, is unknown. Though the first option does seem more likely, as the project would be shot down seemingly immediately, as Ferrell would discuss the already dead sequel in as early as 2006, when he said, "I killed the idea of a sequel, I never liked it. 29 million does seem a lot of money for a guy to wear tights, but it's what the marketplace will bear. It's insane, but it's not my call." The studios perpetuate it, and they make it hard to say no, recalling that it wasn't difficult at all. I remember asking myself, could I withstand the criticism when it's bad and they say, he did the sequel for the money? I decided I wouldn't be able to. I didn't want to wander into an area that could erase all the good work I've done. But you watch, I'll do some sequel in the future that's crap. In the following years, Elf would cement itself as a holiday classic. And when questions of a sequel would arise, Ferrell was consistent in his stance that Elf 2 was not happening.
My question is, are we ever going to get sequel to Elf or Night at the Roxbury?
I've got great news for you. No.
Though Favreau would tease that maybe at some point something might happen, before seemingly also closing the book on that idea in an interview in 2023, stating, "I think there's always room for new Christmas movies. That particular film, I don't know what story would be told after that. It's very complete." And I have to agree with that sentiment. Elf was the result of a perfect storm of elements. Funny, heartfelt, and fulfilling. I also don't know what story would be left to tell that wouldn't feel contrived. So, in the end, I think it's for the best that Elf 2 was never made. But that's the story of Elf 2, and the end of yet another episode of Canned Goods. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, be good to each other, and stay Hemmas.